But we took this idea of the physical triangle actually representing it as a physical object, and we sort of played through those scenarios of why draw it as a triangle? Well, a triangle has three sides, and the way we're treating it here, if I affect one side of the triangle, that effect also extends to one or probably two other sides of that same triangle. And I've actually done things with a little pegboard and a rubber band where I just reshape a triangle and I happen to label the three sides time, cost, and scope. And so you can start to visualize the length of that side called time. I could actually give that a quantity that's 427 working days or 3,220 working hours or what have you. And likewise for cost and scope of work. So the way we read this, you've built a model in project, and your model has the given time, cost, and scope values. And then your scheduled duration is decreased. Scheduled duration is decreased. Has that ever happened to anybody here? Right. Probably yes. Do you know why it happened? Business needed the deliverable earlier, so your deadline got moved in. Okay. Yeah, that's been known to happen. Have you ever started a project and you build out the plan and you're getting to the point where you're ready to baseline it, and then you look at the full scope of work and you say, we should have started this project 6 months ago to finish by the date we want to finish by. Has that ever happened? So in effect, you have a shorter duration. You know, your deadline didn't get moved in, your start date got moved out by delay. There are other reasons why a duration might change. It could be an interruption in work. Your start date, your finish date haven't moved, but there's been, for example, a polar vortex affecting, your working environment, and people are not coming into work for many days or weeks at a time. So you have overall less total duration than you had anticipated. Okay? But if that happens, if you have to decrease the duration of your project schedule, then number two, you may have to increase your cost, and number three, or decrease project scope. And realistically, you may have to do both, increase cost and decrease scope. Now remember, we're going to think of cost primarily as meaning work resources. So, hey, I have less time to do this work, I may need more people. This is an example of the Mythical Man Month by Brooks that many of us are familiar with. And there are a number of reasons why that may not be a good idea, especially with complex work. Adding more people to it may actually slow things down. Or I may have to decrease project scope, meaning I may need to do less work and correspondingly change the project deliverable. I may need to change the scope of capability of the deliverable. Those are all very important discussions the project manager should have with the essential stakeholders, project sponsors, and so on. As soon as you recognize the impact of, you lost a week of a 20-week project due to the weather, that's a substantial decrease in your overall project duration. You probably need to start accounting for that, and that very likely will affect overall cost and scope of work, scope of deliverables. Okay? So you see how those three aspects of a project are really tightly related. And the way we like to visualize it here is, as we said, we get out the little knife there and slice off some of that time, and then you can see the effects on the other sides of the triangle. Now let's move on to the second case. You build out your initial plan with given time, cost, and scope values. You should adjust your plan if your cost is decreased. So in what ways might cost decrease during the life of a project? Yeah, so remember, we're going to think of costs not exclusively, but primarily as work resources. So you had a team of 25 very specifically trained people, you just lost 3 of them who got reassigned to some other project. The overall cost of your project correspondingly has decreased, but so has the capability of your work resources. Other examples of where costs can be decreased. You made some initial assumptions about capabilities of your resource, who's going to do certain types of work. Plans changed. The people who will really do that work may not be as capable, or they may not be geographically located with the rest of the team, so there's a lag due to distances and so on. Yeah, this is actually a very common issue, and in particular with knowledge worker teams where team composition can be extremely volatile. as the project progresses. So if that happens, so number one, decrease project costs, then you may also have to increase your project duration. This is running the mythical man myth now in reverse. I have fewer people to do the work, therefore I need more time to accomplish the desired work. Or, again, may have to decrease project scope. I have fewer people to do the work, therefore I can do less work in the same amount of time. Again, that will affect the deliverable of the project. So this is a great conversation for the project manager to have with sponsors and stakeholders as soon as you model that impact of the decrease in project cost, loss of resources, whatever it may be. Okay. And then the final case, probably the most typical of all. Your initial plan has given time, cost, and scope attributes. You should adjust your plan if project scope has increased. Now, does project scope ever increase once a project gets underway? Yeah, I think it's easier to answer the question, does it ever not increase? So this could be commonly called what? Scope creep. Yeah, something we all deal with in really any project of any complexity. There are other cases, though, where I think this really applies. So sometimes scope creep is legitimate scope creep. We thought we were going to deliver A, but along the way of doing that, we really decided we needed to deliver A plus B because the external environment changed, or competitors came out with something better than A, or any number of reasons. But the other very common case, I think, that often people will say, oh, that's scope creep, is this. We set out to produce a particular deliverable, and we think we know what we are doing when we build the plan, and then we start work, and we discover we don't really know everything involved here, and wouldn't you know it, it turns out there's a lot more to doing this kind of a project than we had thought. There's a lot more work here than we had thought. Now, is that scope creep? I'd say no, because you're not redefining the end result. That's just discovery. That's just normal project manager discovery. And this is one reason why strategies like Agile, which sort of acknowledge up front, don't kid yourself. You can't really understand the full scope of work of a multi-month or multi-year complex project on day one. You just can't. So stop kidding yourself, Mr. PMP, and just acknowledge that, well, let's chop it up into, say, 1 month increments, and I can handle a month at a time, better than I can, say, 24 or 36 months. So this is a very common problem that we deal with. And again, as you would expect, this is the most obvious case, really. There's going to be an impact on duration and cost. Okay, you with me? All right.